This is Leadership Beyond, your community of conversation.
But this is the first time in my professional career that everybody, 100% of us, are consciously aware we are engaged in the change initiative.
Yeah, everything. I mean, COVID caused us all to go through change, right? At the same time, but our experiences were so different.
Facing these unprecedented times in isolation is pure insanity. Joining us today is Amy L. Riley. She has over 2 decades of experience coaching executives, developing leaders at all levels, and consulting with Fortune 100 companies such as Allstate, Boeing, and Cisco Systems. She's also an international keynote speaker, a best-selling author, and a top leadership development coach and consultant. Amy knows that every leader produces the most extraordinary results when they leverage their unique strengths and individual leadership style and commit themselves to a personally inspiring leadership legacy.
Amy's book is titled The Courage of a Leader: How to Inspire, Engage, and Get Extraordinary Results. What I love about Amy's book, and she goes into this during our interview with her, is the way that she has framed it with 4 key pillars. And within those pillars are chapters that give you solid examples and explain how to truly be courageous as a leader.
I really like the fact that you get tips in the book that appeal to the head, knowing what to do. There's heart throughout, caring about people, caring about oneself. But what I really like is the way that we can pull from a compelling future, what Amy calls our legacy, in order to help us get through the bumpy parts of the roads. And that will work for someone who's brand new as a leader, and the seasoned veterans need to be reminded of that as well. Welcome, Amy Riley. Good afternoon, Amy. Thanks for joining us.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So excited to see you finally. I know it's been a minute. We had a little bit of a delay, so we're excited to finally get you here with us. So welcome. Would you please just tell us a little bit about your background and what got you to coaching leaders?
Sure. I found out early in my career that I was interested in how do we set people up for success. Before I even knew that training and development, organization development was a thing, I was in part of a company, and they were doing a sales and service reorganization of the field employees. And I was supposed to be involved on a number crunching side, bringing together BPI numbers and such. And they also had a curriculum called Customer Focus that they had non-trainers help facilitate. And I felt compelled to volunteer for that. And I would show up to these field reorganization meetings, and I would be thinking, how are we going to transfer knowledge from one person to another if we're changing these territories? Some of these folks are independent contractors. What can we train them? What are the legalities behind that? And the corporate trainer who is leading the large scale change took me out to lunch, and she said, I've been watching you facilitate the customer focus sessions. I hear the questions that you ask in our large change meetings. I think you want my job.
Yeah.
And I said, I think I do. And so I actually went on to get the same master's degree that she had. It was a great program at Loyola. And when she left the company, I put in for her job and I got it.
What a great story.
That got me into learning and development. And then I held positions in a couple different companies in a couple of different industries. And that got me really excited about how I use the same process to create customized learning experiences, but the end products look really different because of the people, the culture, where they were at in their development. And I thought, I want to do this again and again. And I find it fascinating to learn about different businesses. So I went out on my own. And at first it was customized learning, but very quickly I learned I want to help leaders. There's so much coming at them from different directions. They're trying to take care of their team. They're collaborating with their peers. They're managing up. And if leaders are doing it right, there's a lot of processing and a lot of care and a lot of head and heart that goes into their work. And I want to support them. So pretty early on in my business, which started almost 25 years ago now, the focus was on leaders.
Well, I want to, before we get into the structure of the book and the 4 pillars, I'm seeing over your shoulder, let's talk about a word called courage.
Yeah.
Why courage? You've been working with leaders for a long time. You certainly are courageous to launch your own business, and we know about your triathlon. But why the word courage? Why does it resonate so much?
Yeah. I was starting to realize with different leaders in different situations, different industries. I've had the pleasure of working with different clients and having different business partners that bring me into different clients. Whenever I was inspired or impressed by a leader, they were demonstrating true courage. Right? They were saying what needed to be said. They were being vulnerable and authentic with their group. They were dismantling something that they had been a part of creating so that they could create a new business model that they believed they needed to serve customers in the future, right? They were being courageous. And I'm like, there is a theme here.
Dare I say it's a secret sauce? It's probably not a secret sauce. I know we're going to get to that later, what the real secret sauce is. But there's so much that, as I just reflect on leaders I've worked with, and I can relate to those ones who just were able to abandon things that maybe they even built, right? Let
Yes.
let
Yeah.
alone just believed, but built.
Yes.
And maybe that was a handful of years ago, and now we're going to take that apart because it's not serving us any longer. And you're right, it's that courage to say, is this serving us still?
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
comes up for me when I hear you describe courage is that, yes, we need to know things. You talked about the head. And yes, we have to have the heart to care about the people and the compassion. But maybe I have the right idea. I know what I need to do. I have a desire to bring us somewhere. And maybe the thing that stops me, and it's one of your pillars, is I now have to say something and I go, well, Amy and Adrian aren't really going to like this. And how does this? And so I stop. And courage to me is taking, and now I'm quoting Adrian always talks about taking a pause and a breath.
Mhm.
And it's the right thing to do. It's for the good of the team, for the good of the organization. And yeah, none of us like it. And then you boldly step forward, then it activates the thing in your head and your heart. But if you
Mm-hmm.
don't, it can stall because
Yeah.
you're like, I'm afraid to do that. And courage is never the absence of fear. It's the decision to do the best thing, even though fear is there. So thank you
Exactly.
for that
I like that
framing.
definition, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's exactly right. Right. The stepping forward in spite of doubts, fears, what the gremlins in our brains are telling us, because our brains are designed to protect us. And that amygdala is just looking for threats like, oh, are you sure you're going to do this? There's high level people in the room. Right? Your reputation is at stake. Like, what if it fails? Are you the one to say this and say this is the way that we should go? And yeah, stepping forward and actually knowing the bolder you're being, right? You're going for extraordinary, right? Those voices are going to get louder.
Yeah. And actually, you just reminded me of the first pillar, which is the courage to be authentically you. Talk a little bit about, I think you already did, about that. Oh my gosh, should I really do this? And then checking here and saying yes.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's knowing who we are. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are those unique ways that we provide value? Right? Because they're lined up with our strengths, and they're also lined up with our interests and our passions. They bring us energy. I'm a big believer that when we're bringing our strengths and our energy, our interest and our passion together, we are our most powerful. And when we're able to say who we are and who we're not, and we're not trying to be 27 different things to everybody, right? Then we know our leadership value. Then we're coming across genuinely. I think we feel more comfortable to, fully step into who we are, and we're not trying to be somebody else. And I also talk in this section of the book about one's leadership legacy, which is the bigger picture purpose and commitment for our leadership. It could be a leadership trait. It could be a new way of thinking about business. It could be a new business model, set of improved processes. It could be a lot of different things. But that becomes the thing that you as a leader are bringing to every project, every relationship, every interaction. And then when it's decision time, what would my leadership legacy want me to do? And if I'm being honest with myself and I'm looking there, right, that often can be what compels us to step forward through the fear, through the doubt.
Would you say that a legacy has to be something business focused, or can it be on the more personal side?
I think the most powerful leadership legacies are those that are overarching, right? Like bring trust and transparency to every relationship, right? Well, now you're building teams inside of organizations that know how to operate with trust and transparencies. And there's going to be some things that you're doing, right? You might be creating shared dashboards, and there's going to be work techniques that help you do that in the workplace. But what if you were bringing trust and transparency to your relationship with your mom and your neighbor and your
Mhm.
friends, right?
And
So
it doesn't necessarily, it will indirectly tie to a bottom line, but it's not, the legacy isn't necessarily build massive corporation, build, insert or department of organization, right? It's not necessarily tying it to the bottom line, but it will, that, like that, for that example, it would indirectly, right? You have
yeah,
trust and transparency. All of
yeah,
that's going to contribute to working better, getting stronger business results, feeding the bottom line.
yeah. You have your overarching leadership legacy that you're looking to. Now, there's probably different projects, different
Mhm.
goals that feed
Right.
into that, right? It might be meeting that bottom line objective, like is the next thing your leadership legacy is calling you to do, right? But it's that consistent guiding light. And we don't want to wait to declare it. Sometimes people think legacy and like, okay, yeah, I could start worrying about that, when I hit 68. No, I encourage emerging leaders to declare their leadership legacy. It's something you're always creating and always leaving behind. I like to think of that word legacy though, because you're touching people and projects and organizations and communities with your legacy. And if emerging leaders don't get it exactly right at the beginning, that's all right.
That's
They'll
part of the
know that.
process.
They'll know that really quickly because they're fully living into it. Okay, now I'm learning.
Might not feel quite right. Might not be the
Right.
right legacy. Might not be what you think it is.
Yeah.
Well, built into everything you just said was inspiring not only yourself, self-leadership, but other people. And you have some real good suggestions for unlocking the talents of your team. And Adrian and I are very passionate about that subject and want to learn with you. So can you talk a little bit about getting the best and most out of those people that are around you?
I feel like we should turn to that chapter of the book. But yeah.
That's not cheating. That's bolstering it.
Yeah, right. I am a believer in having everyone working in their strengths as much as possible, right? How do we have strengths-based work, right? And know that every member on that team, you bring this value, you bring this value, you bring this value. And they're working in their strengths, which means what we're good at and what we're interested in, and leveraging that. And then there's also a piece there about flexibility, right? When we're enabling the team to say how it's going to go, how things, right? Here's where we're headed. And there even could be, flexibility and input around the vision, right? Like we know we need to head in this major direction, but how can we get everybody involved in creating exactly what that looks like? Okay, now that might be set. Now we've got flexibility around how do we get there, right? What are the major strategies? What are the major workflows? I think so many leaders take on like, I need to know all of the knowing. I need to do all of the doing, right? Right. At least have to know all of the knowing, right? I got to know. I can't show up and say, I don't know. But how empowering is it when a leader shows up and says, we are taking on something big here. I'm not 100% sure how we're going to get there, but I know the people in this room or this virtual Zoom meeting are going to be the ones that get us there. I know we've got the talent on this team to get us there. So I'm going to need everybody bringing their best ideas forward. And you're going to bring this value, you're going to bring insights here, you're going to bring this. Yeah. And now people are inspired and they're ready to live up to that expectation.
The great leaders are the ones that can say, I don't know, but this person on my team has been working that. Let's bring that person in, right? And step aside.
Yeah. I saw this happen in a room with a sales team, and they were making a significant change to how they approached sales. I mean, it was a complete business model shift, and it was leaving everyone with so many questions. And she said to them some of the things that I just said. I stole some of it from her. Right? I mean, and it was you felt the energy shift in that room, right? From like kind of like what about everybody anxious to answer their question to like a more grounded, powerful place.
Yeah, so it has to go across the organization. The person in charge doesn't have to have all the answers, but sometimes somebody higher up asks us a question and we feel like not knowing is weakness, instead of saying, that's curious, I'm going to talk to my colleagues and come back to you with an answer. To have that courage, if you're one of those young emerging leaders you talked about, that takes first awareness and second courage. You can't be put on the spot and expected to have all the answers. So that's helpful at every level of experience, not even talking positionally.
Agreed.
Let's talk a little bit about resilience. This topic has come up so many times in the last few years.
Continues to come up.
I mean, always will, right? This is it honestly, it came up a lot before COVID. We just didn't talk about it as much, I think.
It was there, right? Yeah.
It was still there, right? But just talk about like your take on resilience and how to build that in leaders.
Yeah. I'm actually pretty excited that we're talking more about resilience, right? And how does one have that? Because our world is just more VUCA, volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, complex, and changing. Yeah, so I talk about emotional, mental, and physical practices that we can have to build our resilience. And much of it is on a foundation of self awareness, right? And being able to check in with ourselves and how am I feeling, right? How am I feeling in this moment? And I think for many folks, especially when we're on autopilot, our day, we're either emotionally spiraling up or we're emotionally spiraling down. And if we can tune into that and bring awareness, whew, I am feeling frustrated. Right. And it
Yeah,
could
to
be,
give labels to it, right?
Own it
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, right.
Name
And,
it.
and
instead of pretending. Oh, I don't get jealous.
shove it under, shove it under. Yeah,
Yeah.
this isn't happening. But, yeah, I'm frustrated. I'm jealous. Like, oh, right. They just got, I don't know, accolades for that thing. Right. I
Why
wish that
not
was
me?
me.
Wah. Yeah.
Right. And maybe taking pen to paper or recording something or going for a walk and thinking about that, right? Is there anything to do about that, right? Kind of do some healthy processing of the emotion. And I
Power
think
of the
some
pause.
back to your pause, Adrian. Yeah. And I think and often um we don't want to invalidate our feelings and not process them. And I think there are times where, okay, I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling irritated. Like I'm not in a good place, but I've got an afternoon planned and I need to show up for some people, play some music, do something to shift my emotion in that moment. Right. And what are those go to things that we can do in a moment to shift our emotion? I mean, snuggling with the cat or a kid is, a good thing, but that's not always accessible in the middle of my workday, right? So finding those things, is it a few deep breaths? Is it a quick walk outside? Is it playing a minute of a piece of music? Because if we can shift our emotion just a little bit, it makes a huge difference. One time I thought, and okay, two things about that. One is sometimes we can't shift our emotion from I feel crappy, I feel frustrated to I'm ecstatic, I'm elated, I'm super inspired. So I love the question of just consider the emotional scale and how could you just move up just one notch, right? From frustrated to apathetic or like whatever is like emotionally a higher vibration. And the reason why this is important, I used to question this, like, who cares? Like, if I go from frustrated to worried, like, why is that vibrational shift important? And someone once said this to me, and I cannot remember who to attribute this to, but I share it. Imagine you're a small boat out on the ocean and you're facing straight ahead, right? And you can see the horizon out there. You can see where you're headed. Now, shift your boat just a tiny bit. Now look out at the horizon and where you're going to end up.
Way
It is,
far. I
it's
know
a
this.
it's a very different place. Are you a sailor, a boater?
Aspiring
Adrian
sailor,
is,
yes.
Yes, yes. So I've
and
said,
packing is all about small shifts.
Yeah.
Sometimes large ones, but usually small.
yeah. So I've said a lot about emotional. I think there's also mental and paying attention to the thoughts that are running through our heads. Which ones are empowering? Which ones are disempowering? And again, not to wallow in them, but I think naming them, putting them on a piece of paper or in a document, is that even true? Is there anything to do about it, right? Are there some steps that we could take to help mitigate that risk or that thought? And then also taking out those seemingly neutral ones. And are they disempowering, or are they empowering, or are they really neutral? Because sometimes those seemingly neutral ones are sneaky, right? And then index on the empowering thoughts, right? Say those in team meetings, put them on your mirror and on your computer. And then, of course, we all probably know the physical practices, right? To be resilient. Drink your
The donut
water,
doesn't really do it. It gives
eat
you
your
a
good
rush,
food.
but you come down.
Short term only.
Yep.
And the physical is, I think, maybe the easiest of the three, right? If you can just get yourself to go for a walk, right? Or to stand up and do some stretches. And you might find that the emotions then shift, and then
Yeah,
your
it's all
talk track
intertwined.
starts shifting, right? Like, and because some of those, like, oh, I can't talk myself out of this, it's terrible, X, Y, Z. But if you just get up and do something different, change your physical environment, it helps a
Yes.
little, I
Oh, I'm
find.
glad you said that, Adrian. Because I was going to forget to say that. I think those practices that touch on more than one realm of our well-being, right? Those are our go-tos. If I can go for a run with my son, oh, that's mental, emotional, physical. That's
And
Mhm.
spiritual.
that's yeah, yes,
Mhm.
that's the package deal.
Mhm.
Well, there's a word that gets used a lot, and I want to know what you mean by it. Extraordinary. So we have the pillar, the courage to be bold and create the extraordinary. What does that mean to you? And as we wind up this conversation, have some encouragement to leaders, whether they're brand new or don't even know they're leaders, about their legacy and creating the extraordinary.
Awesome. Extraordinary. What would be extraordinary to you? Right? What would be really bold and ideal, and you would love it, and it would feel good to you and the others involved, right? It's the 120%. It's really going for what would be ideal, not the evolutionary, right? But the revolutionary. Where are you going? What would you really like if there weren't obstacles and barriers and realities and all the things that we talk about? For me, one of the things I think about when I think the courage to be bold and create the extraordinary, sometimes my to-do list is a list of busyness,
Yeah.
right? It's a list of reactions. And yes, we have to attend to some of it, right? We got to schedule the meeting with the person or the thing doesn't happen. But like it's scheduling and it's, I got to send this doc and it's this and this and this, right? But then I've got the whiteboard down here of like the bold actions, right? To really get the results that we want. What are the results that you want? And are you believing you can get there? And are you then taking the actions to get there?
It
That's
reminds me of
inspiring.
vision boards, a vision board,
Yeah.
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
Having that, you said your whiteboard, and I'm thinking, have that up so you can see it. So then when you are in the middle of that task list,
Yeah.
you could question, does it get me closer there? If not, do I really need to do
Exactly.
it? Right? Maybe you
Exactly.
do, but yeah. Or at least it's
Maybe,
a
but
reminder of, yeah, it's a small thing, sure, but it's still going to get me closer.
we can get into that swirl of busyness.
Yeah.
And we haven't taken any of the truly important steps. A week goes by, 2 weeks go by.
Mhm.
And what comes up for me is to stay connected to the big, even when you're attending to the small.
Well said.
And so
Yep.
let's say that I do have a lot of those niggly things I have to do today, but I can look at the whiteboard just to remember why I'm doing it. That if these are ends
Yeah.
in and of themselves, I should get them off the list. But if I say I have to do 3 things I'd rather not do in order to enjoy 30 minutes of conversation with Amy Riley. That just expands, and then you get a little more energy. Because there's always something you don't like about what you love. Any parent knows that.
Yeah.
And any boss knows that. And so we forget that we love this. I often forget. I was the one who filed with the state of Illinois that I had this company. Sometimes I resent the company. Wait a minute, you could dissolve it in a day. Oh no, I love the company.
Now they need other things.
Reminder,
Yeah.
because I don't like this. So I really
Yes.
appreciate that.
The tie to the why you just said, that's really important.
And you have to tap into it again and again. It's something you know, but it's not accessible now. And I just pictured looking at a whiteboard or something like that and just letting that energy rise and then knocking off a few of those things and then going for a walk or a run with your son.
Yes. Yes. There you go. That's the flow of the day.
We really appreciate you taking time for this conversation, and we will put in the show notes a link to getting the book, Courage of a Leader, and anything else in the show notes as far as contacting you. But we will leave an open-ended space for you to encourage the listeners any way you choose.
That's now. Okay. Declare your leadership legacy. This doesn't need to take a long time. I would say a week, 2 at max, right? Some of you already know what that is, right? Some of you might need to just do a little bit of a reflection to get it clarified. If it's brand new, take a week or 2 and think about, how did I provide value today? What energized me today? And where those two intersect, that's the space of your leadership legacy. And you put it in your words, right? What makes your heart sing? And then you live fully into it. You trust your leadership legacy and act boldly and get those extraordinary results.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. This was really fun.
Yeah, it was. And what a way to close out. And you told us how to do it. So you didn't just say, go do it. You told us how.
And
Thank
for
you.
more, do not forget to get your copy of The Courage of a Leader, How to Inspire, Engage, and Get Extraordinary Results. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Beyond podcast. We hope you benefited from this conversation as much as we have. We invite you to join our community of conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to sign up at aleadershipbeyond.com for free materials and updates. That's aleadershipbeyond.com. Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.